So there's this video that's making its rounds on the internet right now. It's about the reason that Gen X cut everyone off. That is what the video is about. And I just have some thoughts about that I wanted to share with you, being a Generation Xer myself. And if you stick around to the end, I've got some insight for you that I really think might be helpful for a lot of people that watch my channel, which is for people that are resetting in life or are at that age where they need to make a transition in some way, form, or fashion. But this video has really hit a chord for some people, I think because we are kind of known as the generation of introverts, of people that were neglected. I mean, our name is Generation X, and the experts can't even figure out exactly what range that is. But if you're from the age of about 45 right now to, I would say, 60-ish, early 60s, you're in the Generation X. So one of the things that this video, I think, should take into account, and many of us are gonna intrinsically understand this, is that we were the generation of the Latchkey kids. Basically what happened is both parents ended up going to work, and for a lot of young people during this time, we had to raise ourselves. We were often neglected. The television was something that often brought us up and gave us our morals. So can you just imagine for a moment, Happy Days, Arthur Fonzarelli, hey, this guy's the one who's kind of instilling his moral values into this young generation. That's who I remember. Or how about in syndication, Captain Kirk, Captain James T. Kirk. You know, he's a bit of a playa, if you will. And so we were the generation that grew up watching these kind of shows. A lot of times they were our babysitters. What about Three's Company and Jack Tripper? That guy, he lived with 2 women, right? And he had to pretend like he wasn't interested, but he always was. And so we're that generation that really, the television really influenced a lot of us growing up. Now, it wasn't until older that I myself figured out, after meeting some other spheres of influence, young people that had actually been raised by healthy parents, that I recognized that, whoa, there was some real deficiencies in my ability to communicate. And I think that is one of the main issues that Generation Xers have, is for many of us, our interpersonal relationship skills really suffered, primarily because we didn't have strong social groups growing up. We were alone a lot of the times, left to our own devices. And what that produced for some of us was we were really in our own heads, right? And so many of us are quite analytical in our thinking process. We think deeply about issues, but oftentimes we are kind of self-centered and self-oriented. I remember a woman once told me in a Bible study that I went to, she said, you've got to take an interest in other people. That's what will help you in your social dynamics, taking an interest in other people. And to me, that was revelatory. I had never heard that before. To get out of my own head, to get out of the walls of introspection and start to think about other people's feelings, how they feel. It was about getting out of my own head and starting to really care and take an interest in other people. And I think that lesson really helped me, even though it didn't seem to come easily. Like that was a skill that I had to develop later on in life, was to be conscious of how other people feel, what they might be thinking, and not be so self-centered. Because when you're a young person and you're left to your own devices, and the television is bringing you up, and you're a latchkey kid, you're very introspective, you might think deeply about things, but you have a tendency to be in your own head and only care about the things that you care about. So that was one of the lessons that I learned, was that there's this thing at play for Generation Xers where they're very intrinsic minded, selfish minded, and I don't mean that in a negative or derogatory way. I'm just saying that like the perspective was very about us. So consider that. Some people see this next one as a positive or a negative, but Gen Xers grew up very self-reliant. So we had this sort of independence about us. Again, when you grow up without that the parental oversight, you have to catch up to other people that do have parents that are guiding them. And so in some sense, Gen Xers we're very self-sufficient, but for many of us, we needed that guidance. And so there was actually a setback growing up because we didn't have that parental guidance to correct us. We had to learn on our own. And sometimes when you have to learn on your own, that means you make more mistakes than maybe other people that had that guidance. So on one hand, it's a strength, but on the other hand, it could have been a major deficiency. And how does that relate to, well, cutting people off? It relates in the sense of that maybe we're so about what we do that we don't necessarily have the same kind of value towards other people that maybe rightly should be there. Another point was that being alone feels peaceable, and it's not about being sad because you're alone. And I get this, but I think that the Generation Xers, again, we were kind of groomed to be by ourselves. And since we were groomed to be by ourselves, it's almost like that has a natural propensity to make us more introverted inclined. And since we're introverted inclined, that means we don't need interaction with other people. In some sense, this is a little bit sad because, let's be honest, it's healthy to have strong relationships. Friendship is a valuable thing. And to be on your own, to be excluded, to be introverted all the time, I'm not so sure that that is where happiness lies, even though now in our 40s, 50s, and 60s, it seems like that's just normal for us. It was said in the video that Gen Xers are quite selective in who we make friends with, but I think an honest kind of perspective to that is that Gen Xers, maybe we don't fully know how to make friends easily. So it's not so much about being selective, but it's actually more about just who we can and will have interaction with that feels comfortable for us. Because again, if you weren't brought up in that social environment as a young person, interpersonal relationships can be hard for you. It's a learned skill to be able to talk and to communicate richly. And maybe if you're in a social environment where there's a lot of people talking and action happening, that just intrinsically makes you uncomfortable because you're not comfortable in your own skin around other people yet. I don't know. What do you think? You can go ahead and put in the comments what you guys think about that one. And it was also said that making and maintaining friendship later on in life is hard. And again, I've got some advice that you may or may not be interested in. I will present that at the end, but it has to do with relationship and your setting and where you're at now in your 40s, 50s, and 60s. Some of us, and I'll just throw this out there as a leader towards what we're going to get to in a minute, some of us need to reset our lives. When you're 40, 50, and 60, you've got enough life experience to understand that life comes in waves and life comes in seasons, and sometimes a season is cast upon us. Sometimes we choose it just because we're able to. So a reset for a lot of people means transforming your environment, your immediate environment, and going someplace that is healthy for you. Maybe you need to reset and restart and do things over again. So that's a leader for the very last segment that I'll get into, because I'm somebody that has had to reset my life several different times. I am a Gen Xer, and I was one of these guys that was brought up. The television really did influence me heavily as a young person. Now, for me, that heroic thing always was something that I resonated with and gravitated to, like Optimus Prime, right? The heroes, G.I. Joe, Duke, in some cases, Arthur Fonzarelli, Richie Cunningham. These were guys that I kind of was like, oh, okay, I want to be like that one when I get older. Subconsciously, I wasn't even thinking that. I didn't have the presence of mind to think that way. But later on in life, I kind of, in my own analyzation of who I am as a person, I kind of could see the fingerprints of the writers of these shows, which is, again, I'm not sure that that's a great thing. This one's controversial. Generation X is giving itself permission to stop caring so much. I'm not 100% sure the premise of that is, how do I say, accurate, because I think that a lot of Generation X, we care about things, but we were kind of brought up in such a way that introversion groomed us to not care so much about the exterior and much more about the interior, the immediate scenarios that were playing out in our own lives. And so while we might be crusaders in the sense of, I remember as a young person, they warned us about global freezing, right? Global freezing was the big scare tactic that they were using back in the day out there in California. Now it's global warming, and the trend will reverse itself again soon, I'm sure. But, there are forces that be, that are warning us about these different things that we need to care about in their exterior. Acid rain, you guys remember that one? These things were external, but they weren't necessarily immediate. Now, we had this fear kind of cast upon us as Generation Xers. Nuclear war was a big one. I remember being petrified, just being a young child, watching a movie called The Day After, which was about a nuclear holocaust. Like, what kind of parent lets their kid watch Jeff Goldblum's hair falling out? Like, it was terrible. But anyways, that is what Generation Xers kind of, we grew up as. So I think that we care, but I do think that this vein of nonchalantness kind of runs as a cord through a lot of Generation Xers. Of course, not everybody's the same. I just want to edify you and recognize that a lot of Generation Xers were indeed neglected. It wasn't good. But you made it. You made it this far. You have experience. You have value to communities, and you have something to offer. And so I just want to edify you in that and encourage you that there is a place for you, and there are people that understand your methodology and your reasoning and why you think the way that you do. And it's not something that's wrong with you. It just has to do with the environment that you were brought up with. That being said, we have the good part. Generation X is self-sufficient, and we have the bad part. Generation X was neglected, and there's a residue of that imprints the way we think and the way we operate. But I know that there will be enough people that see this that feel like it's time and it's the season to have a reset, to change some things about the way your life is. And again, some people have had situations cast on them. Like maybe you lost a job. Maybe you're like me and you had the rug pulled out from underneath you, and that forced you to reset, to reevaluate, and to rethink your life and what is valuable to you. If that's you, I'm encouraging you to subscribe. And the other thing that I'm encouraging you to do and to think about is maybe you need to move. Maybe it's time to get out of that city, to get out of that country, to leave the environment of the things that once was, and to rebrand, to recalibrate, to gain a season of just independence that maybe is out of the box for you. Try to develop, even at this age, 45, 55, 60 years old, develop some new friendships, go to a different place, go to a different country. And I put together a PDF. It's free. I'll link it in the description, but it talks about the 9 best countries in Asia that are inexpensive. It costs you about $1,500 a month to live, and you can really reset your life and take some time out. Or maybe you come to a place like this place here. It's just different here. People operate different, they think different, lower intensity, and maybe that's going to be the next season of this life for you. I'm enjoying it. I don't know about you, but go ahead and subscribe, comment. What do you think about this idea that Generation X cuts everybody off? Is that a valid point, or is that just because of our upbringing, or is that a bunch of malarkey, true for some, but totally false for others? Go ahead in the comments, let me know, and we'll do it again. Thanks.